So now we're recording in a post-viewed Bumblebee movie timeline, and we're not going to spoil too much about the Bumblebee movies in our segments in the future, but this segment right now, I'm just going to warn right now, there is going to be spoilers because of the topic that it pertains to here. In order to discuss this topic, we have to actually talk about the Bumblebee movie, and a lot of this stuff. The reason why it was brought up because people saw the movie, and then questions were asked to the director Travis Knight in that sense. So that's just a warning right now. Don't worry, all the other segments moving forward won't be the case, but this one has the big spoiler button warning here. Warning. You know, it's like from Mega Man, the warning sign. So, Screenrants.com interviewed Travis Knight, and they expressed their delight over the Cybertron CG scenes found at the beginning of the movie, found in the middle of the movie, and these few scant ones here and there located at the end. And all the primarily CG robot-on-robot communication and action. And Travis Knight brought up something very interesting, that he would really like to do a completely Cybertron set CG-only movie. And this is what I've been talking about for a while, in the sense that, I mean, what people want, like, everyone wants pretty much just the robots, right? Or Cybertron. Yeah. And I've always said to them that, like, we live in a weird world today that when something is live action, it gets credibility regardless of what the topic is. Like, you could take, I don't know, My Little Pony. The second you make it live action, now people that would have never watched My Little Pony will give it a chance. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying even like from geek culture and stuff like that. I mean, even like the most hardened.
Like I would say we're mostly talking about the masses, like the people that aren't really into it. I think, like, because they follow, like, everything else, they'll be like, oh, this actress that I know is into it, or this actor is in it, and okay, so I'll go check it out for that, you know?
A good example being superhero movies. I think that's probably the best example of it, which was, I mean, for decades on end, it being a comic book didn't interest the masses. It being a cartoon didn't interest the masses. All of a sudden, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and now the girl in class who would have never even thought twice of watching the Fox cartoon is now interested in Wolverine and stuff. So that's kind of,
and I would also say before that you would have your superstar. So you're like your Tom Cruise movie of the year, your Will Smith movie of the year, Mr. 4th of July.
Yeah.
He was for a good time, you know, like any of those, like, oh, that's the big spectacle coming out, you know, and you all go see that.
So why do I bring that up though? It's because the thing is that I think that part of the success that Transformers had in 2007 was, it's so superficial and silly to say it, but by it being a live action movie, it gave people to give it a chance. Where I almost feel that if 2007 came around and the Michael Bay movie was a completely CG movie based on Cybertron and stuff, it would have not got the same attention. I really feel that way. And I know it sounds silly, but that really is the case, is that the masses really have a very tunnel kind of vision when it comes to animation. And yeah, you could argue, oh, but you know, Disney movies always do well and they make millions and stuff. But the reality is, you say that, yes, but I mean, all you have to do is look at the best-selling movies of all time. And all of them incorporate massive amounts of CG in it, but they're still grounded in live action, whether it be Titanic, Avatar, Infinity War. You keep going down to Star Wars. All of those, yes, CG is a large part of it. There's CG characters in it. But at the end of the day, they still are grounded in live action. While something like, let's say, Frozen, you know, as much as that was a big blockbuster, still doesn't even come close to these movies. So that's kind of, you know, because you still have that audience it's cartoons. It's cartoons.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cartoons, thus it's for kids.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's a cartoon. I don't really know anyone in this. You know, it's moving stuff, meh.
So that's why. So you take this here, where if he would have his way and Travis Knight would have a Cybertron only CG movie. Us as fans would be delighted, and even let's say spectators of the movieverse thus far might even be slightly intrigued. But at the same time, we don't know how well it'll do in the box office. I think there's actually something that might be a really good indicator of that, and that's let's look at the numbers that Spider-Man Homecoming made, and then let's look at the numbers that soon to be, I believe it's this Thursday as of this recording.
Yeah, it's this week.
Is the Spider-Verse. Now, again, I'm not going to make predictions, but I would like to, as a spectator, see how well that movie does when it's all said and done, and that'll help us.
I wonder.
Opinions don't matter. I just want to say.
No. I'm not saying opinions here. I'm saying I wonder if you can throw in Venom into that as well. Technically, because I know Into the Spider-Verse is more so a Sony production, more so Sony Animated Pictures, if I remember right, and then Venom is again Spider-Man. Universe, and that's a Sony movie, and then you have Spider-Man Homecoming, which is more so Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios.
I'm taking into account the masses and them going Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man movie. Venom.
Again, the reason I bring up Venom just because it made a lot of money.
Oh, it made money,
and it's already, I think. They've already said that sequel's coming out. Like they're like, oh, we made so much money. Yeah, sequel.
It made money, but at the end of the day, it still was a live action movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I'm trying to.
For all we know, there was people watching those Venom trailers from a mainstream perspective and going, "Gee, I hope it's like Deadpool." Who knows what was going through their mind? But the reason why I bring up Spider-Verse is just because that's an all CG movie, but it's still based on the Spider-Man franchise, and I'm really curious to see the dichotomy between here's a live-action Spider-Man movie, here's an all CG theatrical Spider-Man movie. Let's see how well it does. Is there going to be people who've been watching all these Marvel movies up to this point? Are they going to now lift their nose and go, this is just an all CG cartoon, not my cup of tea? You know what I mean? Where's Robert Downey Jr.? Is he going to make his cameo? Oh, wait, it's a cartoon. I don't want to see that, So I'm really curious what the end result will be. If there's blockbuster success with it, then that'll give me more hope for a Cybertron CG movie finding legs and success. Because again, what we want is regardless of the fact, is not important compared to what the masses want.
Well, one thing I was going to point out, we technically have been getting Cybertron robots only content, like with the Power of the Primes, the Titan Wars, and then also right now Cyberverse.
Well,
so we are I'm just saying, even though it's not a full blown TV show, actual season production, I feel like Hasbro right now, or Hasbro Entertainment, or whatever subdivision, if there is a subdivision, they're kind of let's test these waters. Let's see how it's going right now. Let's do it on a lower scale and see if we can get a little bit more interest and stuff like that. And then doing this big intro and seeing people really, really get into it and be like, oh wow, whoa, look at that going on. I think that would kind of grease the wheels, don't you think? Just giving a little taste here and there that is kind of a low cost to them, and then slowly and then gradually introduce that into the actual movie kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Well,
I feel like that would be helping. Because otherwise you would just get another Transformers Prime. We have to get these little kids in here, and they have to interact with the humans and have a little bit of their drama, et cetera, et cetera. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was kind of greasing the wheels a little bit, and also having their director Travis Knight being like, "This part I'm excited about. This part I really liked. This part." We should do this.
Well, there's two answers to that. Number one, when it comes to the Power of the Prime stuff and Titan's Return and all of that, we talk movie is the big screen, television and Netflix, the small screen. That stuff that was the Machinima series, is the trilogy of that was like the small screen. And that got a really tiny audience because ultimately in the end they didn't renew it. And I don't know, like, no one really knows the numbers on those and how well those did and the downloads from the Go 90 app and all of that. But, I mean, there was a lot of effort put into it. There was a lot of, to bring in Mark Hamill and Judd Nelson stuff, clearly there was a lot of effort. But how many people actually watched it is one thing. Who it was targeted at, like the audience that it was intended for, probably a much more net-savvy, hardcore audience, if anything. The second part to your answer in terms of, like, the use of CG in the Bumblebee movie to dip their toe in the water, obviously it was more probably from a script perspective going like, well, how are we going to have this Bumblebee movie just be about Bumblebee without touching on, I don't want to say an origin story, but, framing the story is the best way to put it. Like, putting that at the beginning and framing it properly. Like, the reality is every single Michael Bay movie had that same framing, some kind of our war at the beginning, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There's always something. So it's no different. It's just...
And the last movie had, let's tack on this King Arthur movie.
Oh, yeah. But...
Like, that was the most weirdest thing. It's like, okay, King Arthur's real in this universe. The dinosaurs went extinct because of some techno-organic bomb that their creators made. The pyramids are made by the Fallen. Like, it's just all the things happen in that universe.
The moon landing.
And all the things revolve around planet Earth, which is just very weird.
Well, again, those movies are behind us now, so... And that actually, it goes into a second part here that I wanted to talk about. There was actually I read an interview with Lorenzo Di whatever, like one of the producers.
Bonaventura, I think?
Yeah.
Something like that?
And he made a mention how part of the reason, at least now, they didn't go forward with The Last Knight was he actually admitted that he doesn't like the idea of Unicron. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, and how if they would do it in a live-action movie, the scope might be a little too big. And I think I'll be honest with him, I think that's silly to say that it's too big. I mean,
go on, sorry.
I think no movie has to, like, say, oh, something is too big to handle. If you could have a Death Star in Star Wars, this big thing, if you could have...
I feel that's a bit different, but go on.
No, I just feel like I like for them to say like this, it's too big to handle and comprehend. I don't think so. I think that all these big event movies that we have and all the crazy stuff that goes on in them, in the same way you could go back and watch the 86 movie and take all that cell animation and turn it CG. I think the scope is still there. I think the storytelling could still be done. Nothing is impossible as long as you have the right person writing it,
I kind of disagree, only because I'm just thinking of a broad spectrum of all the movies we had so far in North America up until now, where let's say Godzilla, that was like probably Godzilla and Jurassic Park. So we had dinosaurs and we're like, oh, cool. I would say the last time people cared about a very giant character like that, Godzilla, like maybe close to Godzilla size, maybe close to dinosaur size, was like the original King Kong. Maybe the 70s remake, maybe. And then you had the remake of Godzilla in the 90s, and that didn't really do very well, and it didn't give this oh, here comes the kaiju in North America. That didn't really happen on a big scale. Ultraman tried to make a big splash in North America, and that didn't really take. And then even with comic book,
he was 3 years too early, in my opinion. But that's a whole other topic.
And then even in comic book movies, the Fantastic Four, they Rise of the Silver Surfer had Galactus, but when they did Galactus, it was like a smoke cloud. They really couldn't get around. Like, we're gonna put a giant guy. He's gonna dress in purple. I think people would just think that's too ridiculous. Like your example of the Death Star. Death Star's super easy to do. It's just a thing that's not moving fast. It's just stationary. Like, you don't really have to do much with that animation. You don't have to do much with creating it, putting it there. It's just it's just something that's stationary, and then the laser comes out of it, and then you can just animate the laser. Like same with there were not The Last Jedi, what was it? The Force Awakens, where that new Death Star, it shot out a laser and then the laser spread. That was its new fancy thing that it did. The Death Star didn't open up and do a bunch of crazy stuff. I think it's just, I feel like if within a context of an animated movie, you can totally suspend your disbelief and be like, okay, yeah, sure. Like if I was watching the Transformers cartoon show and you're going into space and all that, and there's a planet that eats other planets, almost like Galactus, and then the planet itself transforms. Like you can get behind that because you've already seen all the crazy stuff. You know, you've seen your father figure die in front of you. You know, you've seen all this. They're going to other planets, so you're already in that phase. You know, that mode. So you're like, okay, fine, I can go along with this.
I think,
but I feel like putting that on people, like only now, people are slowly starting to get behind Godzilla. That we're getting that big new Godzilla movie coming out.
I think it's it's completely a folly of a writer and perspective. To give a good example of that probably is at least one. I don't know if you consider it a successful example, but you could use something like Star Wars. But it's all about perspective, meaning it's a large object, but it's all about being close to it and then working with that, whether it be Guardians of the Galaxy 2 with Ego, the living planet, and then the same thing with the perspective of something.
Yeah, but
when you have something... let me just finish what I'm saying.
Ego, I was just going to say really quickly, with Ego, they weren't fighting... They were fighting a whole planet, but if you remember right, the fighting took place inside the core of that planet. So even Ego wasn't as giant,
but that's what happens
would normally would have been.
The way Unicron could be handled, and it's been handled in the '86 movie, is that
and in Prime
is that you approach that thing, but a majority of the battle of Unicron from the '86 movie was interior. A lot of it was interior. Yeah, there was a few shots of a laser here and a Dinobot kick butt there, but in general, a lot of it was interior. Even when Armada handled Unicron, a lot of it was interior. And Armada, primarily why they did that was because of the limited budget of a TV series and how much they could animate. So instead, they focused more on the interiors.
So what I'm trying to remember, I remember there was a movie back in the day where the scientists go inside, I think a diplomat or something, and they go to save him from a virus. Do you remember that? It's like The Greatest Journey or something like that. It's an old movie, and a lot of TV shows redo that trope as well.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They take the little ship, they take a big ship, and then they shrink it down with some shrinking technology. They inject it into the person, and that team acts as like white blood cells, an antibody to go take out whatever is ailing this person.
Magic School Bus.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, exactly that. Like, I mean, like, I think the way to marry what we're both talking about is you got to really tie it in with something that's more familiar to people. So like those kind of stories where people always go back to like, oh, you have to shrink them down. And instead of being shrunk down, you're your size and you're going into something way bigger than you. I think that would be the way around it.
Unicron can be done. I think that there's so many ways that it could be done where it could be believable, that it could be enjoyable. The fighting against a Titan and that kind of thing and something large. And again, the most important, at least to me, I don't know about the audience. Again, sometimes the audience makes me question things, but the communication that could be done. Again, like the way that Armada handled it, where the way that they communicated with Unicron was they went inside him, and there was that conduit, that being Sideways, that was the communication tool, and Sideways being something that was Transformer sized, and these two things. That's why, like, it's hard for you. Hard for you to argue something like Godzilla when. Granted, Godzilla is large, but we're also talking about Transformer characters that, while they're not as large as Godzilla, they're in that same kind of spectrum.
I feel you got to ease everybody into it. You know what I mean? I feel that. I mean, you can't just I'm going to take G1 and be like, okay, you get the movie, and then after the movie, you get the city bots. You know what I mean?
I think
I feel like you can gradually go a bit bigger. So like, Revenge of the Fallen had Devastator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have Devastator in that one, and then before you get to Unicron, you should have the Titans. You should have like city Transformers. Like, I mean, I feel it's a bit weird that in this whole universe of the Bay movie, they're learning, they're taking some of their technology. They make the Transformium. What's the name of that thing again?
Transformium. Yep.
Transformium. And then they just never got around to making a city that transforms into a giant robot with the same technology. You know what I mean?
Well,
they never get to that point. And then after you do that, then I feel like, okay, we can do a planet. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that the easing.
I think you want to grow it a bit.
The easing that you're referring to, it could have been done. They had 5 movies to do it.
And they didn't do it.
and we went from robots that turn into cars in the first movie and the basics of that, lightly touching on combiners in the second movie. In the third movie, just kind of like going back to the same thing. And then the fourth movie going, okay, we have dinosaurs, but, like just taking like the staples of Transformers.
In the third movie they had was the lizards, the worms, Shockwave's
no,
worms.
but that's just more fluff. That's just
I
more
know,
garbage.
but I'm just saying, like, they have that, and it's just like they didn't even really go anything. They didn't even do anything with it.
There's a lot of things that exist in the Bay, in the previous 5 Bay movies that are just like. Look back as far as the second Revenge of the Fallen movie, and the Allspark shard, making things come to life, like whether it be a coffee machine or whatever, and now we're looking at bots and it's all a joke,
Yeah,
and it's just
I'm just saying that you can ease everyone into the whole planet thing. It's as opposed to like, all right, we're gonna do the planet.
I think after 5 movies, I think they were ready for it, but
I know, what was it? Dark of the Moon, they were bringing Cybertron to Earth, wasn't that? Or they're going to terraform Earth. So you had like the plates and the big chains with the land on it or something like that.
They were gonna teleport all of Cybertron into Earth's atmosphere and then transfer all the energy, and that would be that. And transfer all the population, and that would be that. But I mean, again,
that kind of had it, but.
I don't want it because, I don't want to compare to the Bay movies because I firmly believe that those movies were, I don't want to say they were terribly written so much that there was just too many people working on them from a writing standpoint. The lore was never really consistent.
No, I felt.
The lore was a mess. The lore was a mess completely. And then you have like the writer's room had 31 people in it, which is like, are you kidding me?
You're not even doing a TV show, so you have 31 writers.
It's not that 31 writers for 2.5 hours of storytelling, and no one is on the same page, and no one has I like to call it a Bible of what is the rule of what's going on in this universe and stuff, and all the conflictions from it, and then like all this stuff that is marketed on the side that then gets thrown out, like whether it be comic books or whatever. And action figures. It's just there has to be a Bible to it. And I feel like anything is possible in storytelling as if it's written properly. And again, in the case of Lorenzo, him saying like, oh, it's he feels that it's impossible. You know what? A lot of people say things are impossible and then they become possible.
Well,
a lot of people would say, back when the X-Men movies were out, oh, it's impossible to make, superhero costumes work on the big screen and not be ridiculous. And we've proven it wrong, and wrong, not just like in terms of reception from mainstream audience, but financially, which is all that really matters to these companies.
We still have yet, to be very honest, to get proper X-Men costumes that last for a whole movie.
That's the fault of the studios that are currently handling X-Men.
I think for X-Men specifically, but not for Marvel. But I kind of see what he means by that, where it's just like, that's a daunting task because, again, we are talking about live action movies. As soon as you bring Unicron into it, you're basically doing interiors that are very similar to what was that movie? The Dark Knight, where they go to get the tomb and all that kind of stuff, and they get the wand, the staff of Merlin.
I can imagine it. I can imagine a
or inside Lockdown's
ship.
You know, I mean, like stuff like that. I feel like, you know, that's your set piece. That's a set
Geiger
piece.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's a set piece. It's not. I don't think they could maintain that for a whole end of the movie. And if they even tried to, I would worry that it would just be it'll quickly come and go as Age of Extinction. You know, like, oh, hey, look, Dinobots, and bye, Dinobots.
Again,
you know?
if one could praise the 86 movie and then compartmentalize how much of it was actually Unicron's interiors, which wasn't much, I would have to say, if I had to time it, maybe 15 to 20 minutes, it could be done. Everything could be done with proper
I'm pretty
writing.
much sure the way he's kind of looking at it, you know, he's basically a producer, right? So he's looking at it like, if I had to make a budget to this, like everyone's expecting Unicron, everyone's like expecting this big giant thing, like, but I have to be like, I can't go over budget with this, you know what I mean? Like, you want to get a nice big thing in there, but it's just like that's how I kind of
a big
see what
CG
he's
character
doing.
Doesn't cost more money than a small CG character. It's all the same thing in the end. It's like, it's not like it's a large thing and it's taking physical mass or space like that.
But CG does cost money.
Of course, it costs money.
And if you're not doing it correctly or it doesn't come out right, then that's more money you have to spend, and that's out of your budget. That's going over budget.
But
I
imagine,
what I mean? So it's not as like making movies isn't as it's a science, but it's not as perfect as all. It's not perfect all the time. You know, that's why movies end up getting delayed. That's why video games get delayed. Hell, you know, because something's not working here and there. We gotta go back and fix it. And that's more money that they're adding to it. That's probably going out of their budget.
I really do. I think nothing is impossible.
I feel like it is possible, but I feel like if it was a consistent possible, then people would have been doing it over and over and over by now. You know what I mean?
Let's put it this way. It's been 11 years now that they've been doing those movies, and they have no clue what they've been doing up to this point. They really have.
Yeah, very much so. So, I mean,
they've been making money. And the thing is, the one that's saying that is someone that's been on that boat for these past 11 years since day one, even before since day one. He was the one who was, you know, trucking that boat forward. Mm-hmm. And for him to say that, you know what, again, I firmly believe that I don't want to say he doesn't know what he's talking about, but it's just that it's coming from a source that really up to this point, you know, financially, have they been successful? Of course they have. Of course they've been financially successful. But from a writing and quality standpoint, and while I don't want to, like, you know, use Rotten Tomato as an example of what a good movie and a bad movie is, but man, you can't compare the Bumblebee movie on Rotten Tomato to like the mess that has been the previous 5 Transformer movies. And again, I give the praise I can to the 2007 movie as much as I can, but the reality is that if they felt those past 5 movies were something that was doable and believable and enjoyable, then I would hate to think, like, you know, you got to be able to think outside the box, to think outside of what you think is possible, because people need to leave movies going, wow, what did I just see? You know, what did I just see, that this larger than life event? And I think he's just saying it in the same way that back in the day, Sam Raimi said he hated Venom and he didn't want to do Venom. You know,
I was gonna bring that up. You beat me to the punch.
But it's true. It's true.
But again, it's like, I feel that Sam Raimi really does love and does like Spider-Man, and I feel like there's always I feel like there's a thing with Venom specifically, in the sense of there's 2 camps. There's the old camp that loves Steve Ditko and all that old school stuff, and then they feel as soon as it got into Venom that something was lost with Spider-Man.
And then McFarlane camp. And
then there's another camp which is people probably our age and younger that love Venom. Venom's like this badass, this cool guy, and we really want to see Venom. Like, so you make this one movie and you have your story, which involves Sandman, Vulture, probably Green Goblin again, but like Norman Osborn's son. And then because you have the studio, Sony, saying you have to put in Venom, people want us to put Venom in it. And you're like, I don't want to do that. you know, and then boom, Venom's in there, and the story obviously suffers for it, you know. So I mean, I would rather him not put in Unicron and not be a fan than not be a fan of Unicron and do him completely disservice. I would rather that happen.
Everything has its place and everything has its time. I know that there's always outside factors that affect things, whether it be we have to do toys of this license is ending, so we have to re-trademark it and make money with it over the next 3 years. There's all kinds of little factors that affect that stuff. I'm aware of it. But at the same time, I feel that when you're given that canvas and you're given those slots to fill in that canvas, being like each individual movie, I think anything can be written properly as long as you have a half a head on your shoulders of writing. I know for a fact, you know, especially as a comic book reader my whole life and everything, where there's that same canvas, that same ability to tell a story. And sometimes certain comic books, not all comic books, but certain comic books, toy branded comic books, their stories are affected because of product that has to be featured, and it becomes a cluster. It becomes a mess and stuff. And you could definitely see it in the writing, or you could see it in like, oh, this thing got shoved in here, it doesn't even seem. And again, like, I feel like if they even, like, imagine if Last Knight wasn't the last one and they continued, and then they did Unicron, and then Unicron is just 5 minutes at the end or something. They just really crammed it in. Like, they did it. That's an answer I can't give because it never happened. So it's.
I know, but I'm saying
if there's one thing I could say is that
the Dinobots were there, and they weren't even that. They even factor in that big.
There's not a
but
single
we still got them in there.
Transformer movie from the modern era of the Bayverse. There's not a single one of those that I was able to predict how anything was going to pan out, because I always thought about it reasonably, and it never pans out that way. It always pans out as a mess. So again, I can't tell you how I would have seen Unicron done under their steed, because I again imagine in my mind what should have been, and it always ends up what it is, and it's never a good thing. Like you said, he would have showed up at the end.
That's why I'm of the boat of, if they're not a fan of it and they don't want to do it, then don't do it. Just really don't do it, because I don't think it's going to come out what anyone wants it to be.
You just attach it to someone who's talented and someone who has drive, and it could happen. It's the difference between Deadpool and Wolverine Origins and Deadpool as a movie. Even though it's the same actor, it's different people with different passions and different frames of mind and different visions of a character, and how you tell a story, how you frame a story, and most importantly, how you pace a story, which is I think that in this day and age of these long movies or these long trilogies or quad or these phases of movies, pace is really important now more than ever. I think that's what kind of hurt in a lot of ways. I don't want to go off a tangent, but even like the Lord of the Rings movies, what kind of hurt them was pace was one of these things that didn't help them in the long run. And
when you read the books, it's fairly similar.
but the point is, the point is that for a mass audience, you know, I mean, again, I can't.
They tried to trim it up as much as possible. If you want to see the more extended, extra blah 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 blah, they have the extended versions out there. But
that ain't
they needed to like, okay, we need to put these in theaters, make it a reasonable amount of time so that they can actually show it more often than once.
Anyways, we've run longer than we should have on this topic, but
we kind of fused two articles together basically.
Yeah, but it was just.
But I'm very excited that if Travis Knight is excited about a Fall of Cybertron movie or a movie about Transformers that's only CG, I am very, very excited for that, and I'm very happy that he's voicing it and drumming that interest. That interest. Like, hey guys, what if we did just the intro of the movie? You know, I feel that's just putting it out there helps so much.
My final word on it is I would love it, but at the same time, will the world love it? That's the question.